Welcome to Fair Comment. I am your host, Jezeem. In the space of 7 days, the senior council of this country's own Buddhist order has suspended one of its most powerful monks. The country's most decorated intelligence officer has been documented by the state's own medical examiner as bearing marks of torture on his body, and a former president of the republic has been barred from leaving the country. This is the first episode of Fair Comment, so before I begin, I want to tell you exactly what this show is. This is a place where we ask questions nobody else seems willing to ask out loud, by name, on the record. Not opinion, not gossip, not party politics, questions asked plainly. Last Saturday, the 30th of May, the Malwatte Chapter of the Sri Lankan Sangha did something it has, in its modern history, almost never done. It suspended one of its own most senior monks. The Council of the Malwatte Chapter, the Supreme Council of the Siam Nikaya, one of the two great Buddhist orders of this island, voted to suspend the Atamasthanathipati from his administrative powers and duties. The chief prelate and the custodian of the 8 sacred sites of Anuradhapura, the senior administrative authority over the Sri Mahabodhi. His name, Venerable Pallegama Hemarathana Thero. He is 71 years old, and he has been suspended, and I'm quoting the Malwatte Chapter directly, until the conclusions of the legal proceedings against him. The legal proceedings the Malwatte Chapter is referring to are the charges of repeated rape and sexual assault of a 11-year-old girl. The girl is 14 now. She is in a state protection center. Her mother has been arrested, charged with human trafficking under the penal code. Police submissions in open court allege she was paid 100,000 rupees to bring her daughter to the monk. And the National Child Protection Authority, listen to this, told the court in their own words that they had to take a stick and chase the police to get this man arrested in the first place. The State Agency for Child Protection had to chase the police to arrest the monk who has been named in writing as a suspect. And what evidence did the agency lay before the court? Records of 84 phone calls between the monk, one of the most senior Buddhist priests in the country, and the child. 2 weeks ago, on Friday, the 22nd of May, Pallegama Hemarathana Thero was released on bail. 2 personal sureties of 5 million rupees each, a foreign travel ban, a magistrate's warning about witness interference, and then he just walked out. His 20 lawyers, led by one of the most senior silks of this country, have denied every single allegation. He is, as the law requires, presumed innocent until proven guilty. But I want to give you one more figure tonight, because this is not one rotting priest. According to the National Child Protection Authority itself, between May 2023 and May 2026, in this country, 285 Buddhist monks were subject to complaints of child abuse. The chairperson of the NCPA, herself a retired High Court judge, has said publicly that over 70% of those complaints involve sexual offences. This is not us. This is the State Agency for Child Protection reporting on the state of child protection in this country. So when the Malwatte Chapter suspended Pallegama Hemarathana Thero last Saturday, they did not do it because the religious establishment of this country suddenly grew a conscience. They did it because they could no longer hide him. And the question this program is asking, the question is not did he or didn't he. The question is how many girls, over how many years, and in how many temples. Did anyone anywhere in the institutional Sangha know and look away? And the deeper question, the one nobody on television will say out loud, is whether this country, which calls itself the cradle of Theravada Buddhism, has built an institution where the powerful are protected by the prayer bells and the children are protected by no one. We will return to that question properly with names, with dates and documentary record. Now I want to take you somewhere else, to a cell in the CID headquarters in Colombo Fort, where a 60-year-old retired Major General has been held under the Prevention of Terrorism Act for 100 days. His name, Major General Suresh Sallay. He is, by any honest reckoning, one of the most decorated intelligence officers this country has ever produced. The man whose wings intelligence led to the precision strike that killed the political head of the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. The man who ran the operation that captured KP, the chief financier and the arms procurer of the LTTE. KP was arrested in a hotel in Kuala Lumpur and brought to Sri Lanka even before the morning press knew what was happening. He is the only intelligence officer in Sri Lankan history to have spoken from the podium at the United Nations. He also singularly holds the record of being the head of the Directorate of Military Intelligence and the State Intelligence Service. What has he been accused of? He has been accused of being the mastermind, yes, the mastermind of the Easter Sunday attacks. And on Wednesday, the 3rd of June, his lawyers stood up in the Colombo Fort Magistrates Court and said something that should stop the entire country in its tracks. They told the court that the government's own Judicial Medical Officer, the official state forensic examiner, had documented torture marks on 5 places in Major General Sallay's body. The government's own doctor, the state JMO, official report, 5 marks of torture. They told the court that the same official medical reports show this man, 60 years old, a 40-year-old servant of this country's national security, now suffers from severe depression, severe anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. They told the court, and this is the line we cannot cross for the sake of humanity, that he is, in the medical assessment of the state's own doctors, at a serious risk of suicide. Government's own doctor says the state's own prisoner, the man it accuses of being a terrorist, is being driven in its custody towards taking his own life. And what was the Attorney General doing while his lawyers said this in open court? The Attorney General of Sri Lanka, was asking the magistrate to allow him to represent the CID officers accused of carrying out the torture. The Attorney General asked the magistrate to allow him to represent the very officers accused of committing this torture. The country's chief law officer trying to represent the very state employees that the country's own medical authority has documented as having tortured this prisoner. Legal experts in this country, public ones, named ones, have said clearly that the Attorney General cannot represent those officers, that his constitutional duty is to the rule of law, not the protection of accused torturers. The magistrate is to rule on this point next Wednesday, the 10th of June. We will report what happens. But this is not new. In March of this year, 3 months ago, Suresh Sallay's wife wrote a formal letter to the IGP of this country. She did not write about politics. She did not write about her husband's innocence. She wrote about how he was being treated. She wrote that her husband had told his brother, a retired commando of the country's army, that he was being subject, in her exact words, to cruel and inhuman, degrading treatment by the administrative arm of the CID. She wrote that he was being subject to psychological pressure to give a confession, what she called mental torture. She wrote that that 21-year-old son had gone to see his father and was sent away by the CID after waiting for 3 hours because of paperwork. She wrote that her husband's consultations with his own lawyers were being held under direct supervision of the CID in violation to privilege. Those conversations were being recorded and listened to. So basic violation that any first-year law student would know about it. She asked the Inspector General of Police, formally in writing, to refer her husband to a Judicial Medical Officer and a psychiatrist. That was on the 7th of March. It has now taken 3 months, but the Judicial Medical Officer's report exists and it says what she was afraid it would say. I'm not going to tell you whether Major General Suresh Sallay is guilty of what he's accused of. That is for a court to do. We will come back to the evidence in a future episode in full. But I will tell you this. There is no version of justice, no version of any common law system on this earth in which the state tortures a man, drives him to the edge of suicide, refuses him a confidential lawyer, and then tries to use its own chief law officer to defend the torturers. This is not justice, but the most extraordinary moment of this extraordinary week was something else again. On Wednesday, the same day Sallay's torture report was being read into court record, the Criminal Investigation Department went into the same Colombo Fort Magistrate Court and asked the magistrate to impose a travel ban on the former president of this republic. His name, Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Gotabaya Rajapaksa cannot now leave Sri Lanka. He has not been named as a suspect in the Easter Sunday investigations. He is described in court submissions as a person of interest. Two other men, a retired army colonel named Mohammed Ansar and a former intelligence officer named Premananda Udalagama, have been placed under the same travel restriction. This is the first time a court in this country has ordered Gotabaya Rajapaksa himself to surrender his right to leave Sri Lanka. And it is the first such order in 7 years in connection with the Easter Sunday bombings. Now I want to be very careful here, because there are two ways to read this, and both of them deserve to be on the table. The first reading is the official one, that the Easter investigation is finally, after 7 years, reaching the people it should always have reached. That the most powerful man in the country at the time of the attacks, the man who became president 7 months later on the back of the security failure, is now being asked to account for what happened. That is one narrative. Other narrative is backed by fact, which we are going to look at very soon. The other reading is that this government, which came to power to find the Easter bombings mastermind, has, for 100 days, the state's own medical officers have documented torture on his body, and is now widening the net to a former president because the original net was not catching what the government promised the country it would catch. That is the other reading. No honest journalist in Sri Lanka who can tell you which narrative is correct. What I can tell you is this: the investigation that produced the case against Major General Sallay is the same investigation that has now produced a travel ban against Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The two are not separate matters. They are the same matter that was born from the same source. And the evidence against the general and the evidence that has put him in the cell for 100 days, as it stands today, a single statement recorded in an embassy in France by a witness who has yet to confirm his presence in a Sri Lankan court. If that is the evidence against Suresh Sallay, then what is the evidence against the president? That is the question this program will keep asking. We will bring you some interesting facts surrounding the Easter Sunday bombings that we ourselves have analyzed after reading thousands and thousands of pages of documented evidence analyzed by some of the senior judges in Sri Lanka. But for now, a monk suspended by his own order, a general with torture on his body, a suicide warning on his file, a president banned from his own country's airports. And the truth is, these are not three stories. They are one story about a country where power moves in shadows, where the powerful are protected by silence until the silence finally cracks. About institutions, the Sangha, the CID, the Attorney General's Department, and the presidency itself, that have for too long been allowed to operate without being asked the simple, hard questions in plain language. This program, Fair Comment, was created for that reason, to ask questions carefully, by name, with documentary record on the table. Not to tell you what to think, but put the facts in front of you and trust you to think for yourself. Not an opinion, not gossip, not party politics, just the questions asked. And in the coming weeks, we will go deeper into every one of these stories. We will publish the full file on retired Major General Suresh Sallay, thousands and thousands of pages into the Easter Sunday bombings, including material that has never been put forward to the Sri Lankan public. We will return to the monk by name with the record. We will ask whose desk the $2.5 million American walked off, the money this treasury emailed to a stranger this year, and never notice was gone until the creditor rang to ask. We will ask the Prime Minister and the President the questions they have been allowed far too long to avoid. So here is the ask. It is my first episode. I hope to bring you a lot of content. My team works very hard. And if you've stayed with me for the last 15 minutes, please subscribe to this channel right now before you do anything else. I'll tell you why. Not because I'm asking nicely, because if you don't, probably this program will not survive its first season. But that's all right. But not a lot of people will come by asking these tough, hard questions based on fact that will be brought to you in its original context. And I will say this plainly, there is no other place in Sri Lankan public life right now asking these questions. There is no one else in Sri Lanka boldly asking these questions, boldly challenging the narrative that is being put forward to the public. We are a responsible agency. I ask you again, please subscribe. Support us. We will ask the hard questions on your behalf. We will bring you the truth on your behalf. Hit subscribe. Turn on the notifications. Share this episode with one person. The one person who you think also wants their country back. Not from politicians, not from religious leaders, but to its democratic track. That is the entire ask. Thank you for joining. This is Fair Comment. I am Jezeem, your host.